Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Aurobindo Pharma Limited Q3 FY21 earnings conference call. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star and 0 on your touch-tone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Krishna Kiran. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, and a warm welcome to our third quarter FY21 earnings call. I am Krishna Kiran from Aurobindo Pharma Investor Relations. We hope you have received the Q3 financials and the press release that were sent out yesterday. These are also available on our website. With me, we have our senior management team represented by Mr. N. Govindarajan, Managing Director, Mr. Sanjeev Dani, COO and Head Formulation, Mr. Santhanam Subramanian, CFO, Mr. Swami Iyer, CFO Aurobindo Pharma USA. We will begin the call with summary highlights from the management, followed by an interactive Q&A session. Please note that some of the matters we will discuss today are forward-looking, including and without limitation statements related to the implementation of strategic actions and other affirmations on our future business development, and commercial performance. While these forward-looking statements exemplify our judgment and future expectation concerning the development of our business, a number of risks, uncertainties, and other important factors may cause actual developments and the results to differ materially from our expectations. Aurobindo Pharma undertakes no obligation to publicly revise any forward-looking statements to reflect future events or circumstances. And with that, I will hand over the call to Mr. Santhanam Subramanian for the highlights. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Krishna. Good morning, everyone. I hope that all of you and your families are safe and healthy. We will now discuss the results for the third quarter of the financial year 2021 declared by the company. For the quarter, the company clocked a revenue of 6,365 crores, an increase of 8% over last year. The EBITDA before Forex and other income increased by 13% year-on-year to rupees 1,369 crores. Reported net profit was at 2,946 crore against rupees 705 crore in the corresponding previous year. The net profit after exceptional item net of tax for the quarter stood at rupees 837 crores. In terms of the business breakdown, formulation business in Q3 FY21 witnessed a growth of 11% year-on-year to rupees 5,682 crores and contributed 89% of the total revenue. API business clocked a revenue of rupees 682 crores and accounted for 11% of the total revenue. In the formulation business, the US business posted a growth of 7% year-on-year to rupees 3,172 crores. On a constant currency basis, US business increased by 3% year-on-year to around $431 million. During the quarter under review, we have filed 8 ANDAs. The revenue of Aurobindo Pharma USA, the company marketing oral products in USA, has increased by 11% year-on-year for the quarter. Revenue of Auromedics, the injectable business, decreased by 11% year-on-year to $69 million for the quarter. However, the injectable business witnessed a healthy growth of 6% sequentially. We have filed a total of 441 injectable ANDAs as on 31st December 2020, out of which 87 have received final approval and the balance 54 are under review. European formulation revenue clocked at rupees 1,671 crores in Q3 2021, an increase of 13% over last year. In euro terms, the revenues increased by 1% year-on-year. Growth markets revenue increased by 15% year-on-year to 396 crore in Q3 2021. On a constant currency basis, growth markets reported an increase of 10% year-on-year. ARV formulation revenues were at 443 crore, increased by 42% over previous year. On a constant currency basis, ARV revenues witnessed an increase of 36% over previous year. The increased conversion from TLE to TLD across the geographies has led to the growth. R&D expenditure is at 390 crores during the quarter, which is 6.1% of the revenue. Net organic capex for the quarter is around $76 million. The closing rupee versus US dollar rate was 73.07 in December 20 versus 73.77 in September 2020. Net cash including investments at the end of December 20 was $117 million versus net debt of $194 million at the end of September 20. The cash and short-term investments are at $813 million. The average finance cost is at 1.5%, mainly due to availing multiple currency loans. This is all from our end, and we are happy to take your questions now.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with the question and answer session. Anyone wishing to ask a question may please press star and 1 on your touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Anubhav Agarwal from Credit Suisse. Please go ahead. Mr. Anubhav Agarwal, your line is in the talk mode. Please go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to have lost the line for the current participant. We'll move on to the next participant. That is on the line of Neha Manpuria from JP Morgan. Please go ahead. Neha, your line is in the talk mode. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, Neha.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We are able to hear you, Neha. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. My first question is on the injectable business. If I remember correctly, we had mentioned that our global injectable business was roughly about annualizing 380 million last quarter. And if I look at the numbers we reported this quarter, it's close to about 435 or 440 million. The US has seen some improvement quarter on quarter, but what's driving the momentum in the global injectable revenue?
So, I think first of all, Neha, as you would appreciate, any year like a specific quarter may not give you an answer because there can be different mix. Suddenly, a European injectable sales gone up for that particular quarter. I think it would reflect differently. As far as our overall generic injectable business has been seeing significant improvement in the last 5 years. The current annual run rate, as you had mentioned earlier also, is around 380 million, and this is expected to reach around 650 to 700 million over the next 3 years. This will be predominantly driven by our new plant in the USA as well as the new plant which is coming up in Vizag, which will be serving the needs of Europe and emerging markets, and our expansion in Unit 4 and ramp up in Eugia. These are the ones which will propel the growth to the numbers, whatever I mentioned, Neha.
So I shouldn't read the 109 million in this quarter as the sustainable revenue. Is there some one-off element in that? Is that the way to look at it?
No, I'm not saying that. I think it is not one-off. I'm saying, Neha. My request to you is to look at it on an annualized basis rather than on a quarterly basis. That is what I'm suggesting.
Okay, understood. My second question is on the US business. If I look at our oral solid revenue, we've seen a pretty strong momentum quarter on quarter. Is there any specific product, etc., that drove this? If you could give some color on that, particularly given we've seen fairly muted trends from most of our peers.
Swami?
Okay, yeah, good. Thank you. I'll take this question. Thanks, Neha, for the question. Yes, US has been growing steadily, and this continues to be a story. We have fairly secular growth. I cannot talk about any one item that has particularly grown. On an overall basis, we've been doing well. We've been increasing the volumes. You understand we have a large portfolio, and we have been able to capitalize on some of the opportunities.
Okay, so this is more from existing portfolio?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Girish Bakru from Bank of America. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my question. Govind, just on PLI scheme, if you could just elaborate, what is the investment going to happen in terms of the timelines? And is the USP mainly around the process that Aurobindo will bring on the table, or what is the main USP for us here?
So first and foremost, I think as far as PLI is concerned, it's in the public domain that we have been allotted 3 products, and we have sought certain queries, Girish, in terms of specific to those 3 products. Depending on the answers, I think we may go ahead with 3 or we may go ahead with 2 products. In case if we go ahead with 3 products, you should take the capex as around 3,000 crores, but that would happen over a period of 30-32 months, Girish. And as far as the USP is concerned, I'm sure you are aware of the fact that Aurobindo was one of the first company to have gone and started manufacturing Pen-G, and even the current process, which most of it is practiced even in terms of I think direct crystallization, even in Pen-G was was done by Aurobindo way back, I think when we had set up the shop in China. So we have a tremendous amount of knowledge in these products, and as far as USP is concerned, one is our awareness of the process. There is one more advantage for Aurobindo is because most of these products we are talking about, we ourselves consume almost 40 to 45% of our captive consumption into our own API, which should get into the market.
And when you say that you may actually do 2 or 3, is this the case that you will have to have a separate plant for each product, especially for these fermentation-based products?
Obviously, sir, because if you are doing a Pen-G, that would be an independent plant, and when we are doing 7-ACA, that will be an independent plant. Just to throw some light in terms of how would it work, it would be independent plants only, Girish.
Right. And just on the margins, if you could give some color, back on the envelope calculations for us, assuming that this business has even inherent margin of 15%, the API business, should we assume that this is materially margin accretive for you post FY24?
Yeah, I think what I would say is you should not look at it for the first year whenever we start. I think you should give some time in terms of measuring the margin, because the first year would be always used for stabilization. I would say as far as margins are concerned, our objective is to make the product competitive with or without incentive. So that's how you need to look at it, and this is one of the reasons we had participated in this.
Thank you. I'll join back with you.
Thanks, Girish.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anubhav Agarwal from Credit Suisse. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Morning. Govind sir, one question on the API target that you've given in the presentation, that you want to double it over the next 4 to 5 years. So effectively adding that next set of $400 million sales, a couple of questions there. One, are you including any benefit from PLI scheme over there, or that's only the bulk drug part, so you're not including any benefit there? And second, for this next set of $400 million sales, what kind of capex you will put there to get that?
Yeah. So there are 2 aspects to it. One is obviously it includes the PLI scheme, not necessarily the incentive as well, because our objective is, as I told you, that we would like to be competitive with or without incentive. That is our objective. Partially that incentive could have been considered, but not necessarily fully. What is important is our growth, again, when we are talking about doubling, that is our CFO wish, is basically not only based on PLA, but based on in terms of our own opportunities we are seeing in terms of our existing APIs as well as certain large volume products we would like to do. The objective is, if you remember, for the past almost around few years, we have been supplying more quantity to our internal consumption, and we have not been aggressively positioning or promoting ourselves as an API manufacturer for our external customers. One of the reasons is obviously because of the lack of capacity as well. So one is we would be expanding our existing capacities, including creating some large volume blocks to cater to our customers externally. Second is we are in terms of existing products, plus we are also planning to invest on a separate unit, which we already have the infrastructure, just opposite our existing unit in Vizag. It's around 90 acres or so, where we are planning to manufacture 4 large volume products, which we are not currently in our portfolio. So which would also, like, I think, help us in terms of achieving this particular goal. And as far as CapEx is concerned, apart from the PLI scheme, for the current the expansion of API, it would happen over a period of another 2 to 3 years. It could be additional 800 crores is what I would say, Anubhav.
So just effectively incremental capex of almost like $100 million. Can you do incremental sales of $400 million?
We also have PLA, as I told you, that we are talking about the 2,000 to 3,000 crores approximately. That plus this particular incremental would allow us to reach that particular level is our belief, Anubhav.
So this will be very back-ended because PLI largely gives you fiscal 24, fiscal 25. So effectively, this target of doubling sales will largely happen in fiscal 25. It will be significantly. I'm saying it will be significantly back-ended, this target achievement of doubling.
It will be significantly back-ended. You are right. I mean, I think you cannot, like, I think, have it in the next one rough years to see that particular impact of those creation because it will be significantly back-ended. You are right. But still, we are confident about growing the API even, I mean, it may not be to the commensurate to reaching that particular target, but definitely, like, I think organically we would still be growing with the existing capacity. As well as, like, internally also we are expanding capacity. To give an example, like in Vizag, we already have created shell for some large volume products where we need to fill in equipments and do it. Those would happen in the next 1 year to 1.5 years itself. Anubhav.
Okay. And second question was on the China market. Can you just talk about how large this business can be for you in, let's say, 2-3 years? You already have a good set of filings. But most of the filings on the oral side. So one, are you looking at injectables as well, and how large this business can become in less than 3 years?
Yeah. So to start with, I think China obviously is an important geography for us going ahead. We are setting up an oral solid manufacturing facility in China. And we are fairly confident about the performance because as we have already filed 28 products and we expect around 8 to 10 products approval in this calendar year, which will also allow us to participate in the tender as we move forward and after we started receiving approvals. I'm not putting a specific number on that at this juncture, but as we move forward, like I think we'll also be having injectable for China as well.
But can this be, let's say, $150-200 million opportunity, let's say, or let's say $100-200 million opportunity in, let's say, 3 years? I mean, just as a very, very broad indication.
Over a period, that opportunity is definitely there, Anubhav. I don't want to assign a specific timeline for a simple reason because it is also correlatable to the timeline of us receiving approvals as well.
Okay. And just one last question from my side on the vaccine front. When you look at this business, of course, near term you will have benefit from the COVID vaccine. But when you look at this business more sustainably over 3 years period, how large this vaccine business could be for you with already the facilities that you have today for it?
So currently, the facility what we have created is for bacterial facility, which will start manufacturing the PCV pneumococcal vaccine, like I think as soon as we receive the approval. And in fact, we have already presented our data to SEC we are awaiting clearance from them in terms of starting the phase 3. And the day we started, you can take it as approximately 9 to 12 months we'll complete it. And we'll target within the same timeline to get approval as well. And then we will start launching the product in India and then move it to the Gavi market. So that is our objective as far as PCV is concerned. So the revenues will start in the next, let's say, 1.5 years or so. That is as far as PCV. And the viral vaccine facility currently will be predominantly used for COVID. But there are 2 objectives why we have created that, rather 3 objectives why we created that facility. Short term, rather we advanced creating that facility is for the COVID vaccine because we saw an opportunity. But apart from that facility, we need it because we would like to make the clinical material for RO vaccines, which is our US arm, which is developing the viral vaccine both for the future. So they also need this particular capacity so that we can optimize our cost of not doing contract manufacturing in the Western world. That is the second objective. The third objective is we are also looking at contract manufacturing opportunities for the viral vaccine facility. And obviously, I think the bacterial facility also, apart from whatever our needs are there, I think whatever is the capacity available, we'll be exploring for both viral and bacterial some contract manufacturing opportunities as well.
So just to ask a very simple question on this, can this be $100-200 million opportunity, let's say fiscal 24, both put together pneumococcal and the contract manufacturing opportunity?
Again, Anubhav, you know my answer. Over a period, definitely, like it is that opportunity is available. I'm not giving a specific timeline because this is subject to, again, the various approvals we need to receive, Anubhav.
Okay. Thank you, Govind. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Cinderella Thomas Carvalho from Centrum Broking Limited. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. And so if you could help us understand the current U.S. scenario in terms of injectables, a bit in terms of how the pandemic is still impacting us, or are we seeing a recovery? Sequentially, yes, we have seen, but on the current quarter, could elaborate a bit?
Madam, your voice is a bit feeble, so I presume your question is like, I think in terms of injectable business, is it recovering? Is I presume the question, is it fairly the one which I understood, or anything you want to add to that?
Yes, sir. No, yes, sir, you're right, sir.
As I was explaining Neha also, because this particular 1 quarter sudden speed is not because like I think there is a one-off is happening, because yes, there was slowdown because of COVID and that is now ramping up. That is one of the reasons we always say that as far as the injectable is also concerned, you measure on an annual basis rather than a quarterly basis. Yes, the answer is the business is coming back, and both in terms of like I think Aromedics as well as Acrotech Biopharma. Swami, would you like to add something to that?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, so our business has been growing and we are doing better definitely, but it would have been far better if it is completely normal. The elective surgeries are not fully back. They are, many states are still having a problem. So looking forward, I think we should do better in terms of injectables.
In terms of new launches, anything that you could indicate for the U.S. in specific?
So in terms of new launches, are we talking about injectables or are you talking about generally?
No, injectables, sir.
Yeah. So we have, as you know, we get approvals regularly. We should be launching a few products in this quarter. In fact, we have already launched from the new approvals. I think we are targeting about 4 products this quarter for launch. And even in the next year, we are hopeful that we would have some more approvals to launch during the first quarter and subsequent quarters.
If you need to be more specific, madam, like I think annually we will be launching around 12 to 15 products in injectable. This year we already got approval for 11 and we expect another couple of them before the end of the year. That should be the same momentum we would like to maintain for next year also.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand, I think the launch in terms of complexity should go on increasing on an overall basis and the injectables.
Yes. That is true.
And so, Govind sir, if you could help us understand anything that we have heard on the pending US FDA audits, because we heard that at least like some have started. Do we have any indication from the regulator?
Not at this juncture, ma'am. I think so we have already completed the CAPAs in terms of 1, 9, 11, and to an extent even 7, and we are awaiting further direction from them. Even though, like I think we have seen that there are certain inspections which have started for the shortage products. Now that I think the pandemic is like I think coming down and the vaccine rollout has happened, we expect them to start the inspection in the near future. That is our belief.
And so on the vaccine side, from a pure COVID basis opportunity, how India would be the focus? Like, what is the plan for Indian market? Would it be a pure government supplies or private or both?
You are talking about specific to COVID vaccine or you are talking about general, madam? I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you clearly.
So sorry, sir, for the poor network. I'm asking for COVID vaccine in terms of India.
The COVID vaccine, I think we'll be looking at both opportunities, madam. I think whatever institutional need in terms of government, we are open about it, or we can also go to the private market. So both are open for us.
Okay, that's helpful. So I have more questions. I'll get back in the queue.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tushar Manudhane from Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I missed the opening remarks. Just would like to know if you have clarified on the impairment taken in the exceptional item.
Yeah, Tushar, we have gone through that considering the increased risk on account of continued impact on account of COVID, specific challenges due to slowdown in certain lines of business and overall decrease in actuals, we have done the net discounted cash flows have been reassessed actually. Also, due to the volatile market conditions, the market growth rate as well as the discounting factors have been reassessed in the COVID environment. And the resultant impact of carrying value of the intangibles, including the goodwill, have been provided in a prudent manner. This will be assessed at a later date once the normalcy returns.
Got it. So this is not a particular product specific, it is
not particular product, etc. It is mainly due to the market conditions, and we were supposed to, ideally since September we are not done, and we reassessed whether it is improving or not. Since it has not improved, we have taken the call at least from a COVID environment because we need to convince the auditors also.
Got it. That was helpful. And on the biosimilar side, particularly BP14 and BP13, where the clinical trials are expected to conclude maybe in Q1 FY22 or by early Q2 FY22, just would like to understand how many biosimilars already there for these products in the market?
I think around 8 to 10 might be there already, but we are still confident because of our yields and also like our own front end, we are still confident of capturing good market share.
Got it. And this is with the focus for the new US or how to look at it?
No, it's now going to, you're talking about 13 and 14 will start with Europe only, and the US can be later because Europe, as you might be aware of it, we have gone with the extended phase 1. So I think that is something for Europe, we will look at it later, but right now for US we'll consider it later. For Europe, we are going ahead with the clear protocol having been cleared by the authorities as well.
Good. Thanks. That's helpful.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shyam Srinivasan from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my question. The first one is on the on the injectables, generic plus specialty. We are at about 600 million annualized rate, 3.4 billion kind of full year number. So I'm just saying about 20% now is injectable, but our margins have remained similar. So just want to understand from a margin perspective, and you've talked about the kind of maybe rough doubling of this number. So just want to understand, Govind, when this could reflect in margins. Some of the peers seem to be reporting very high numbers. So I'm just curious when it will translate for us.
Yeah, as far as the injectable, I think you will start see, okay, obviously the injectable margins are definitely better than our oral. There is no doubt about it. But you have to also remember the fact, like Aurobindo has various verticals. Somewhere I think we don't differentiate because of it. These are not clearly seen in terms of those expanded margins of injectable within the total, I would say, presented details. Having said that, I think we are, as we had mentioned, that moving from the so-called 380 million to like reaching 650 to 700 million, definitely you will start seeing those differentiated numbers as we move forward.
Got it. So it's going to be a journey, is what you're saying, right? Govind, you will not see it probably in the next 12 months, but maybe longer. Is that how
you can see? I think, it all depends on what you're looking for. So definitely, like I think year on year the margins are when the injectable numbers are increasing, the overall margins of injectable, would be definitely better compared to year on year. That will. But the point what I'm making is, in the overall scheme when we are presenting, you may not be able to see that is where you need to look at it. Because suppose, let me put it this way. If injectable is growing at, let's say, like at a certain degree, if others are also growing at the same degree, you will not see the difference much. But if injectable is growing, propelling better than like the others, or rather the other business slow down, you will start seeing better injectable number. So that is the reason you are not able to see it separately, but definitely injectable numbers are coming up year on year. It has been improving year on year is what I would say, Shyam.
Okay, that's helpful, Govind. Second question is on the UB612, right? So what's the update? When is the trial data going to be out? What is the timelines there?
So they are going to start. So they are the. In fact, I'm sure you might have seen the SEC meeting minutes also. Like I think clearly, even the Indian government has asked us to submit the protocol after approved by ANVISA. We are expecting that by this month end, and they should start the trial in Brazil for phase 2/3 by beginning of next month. Rather next month they'll start. We still expect our first set of data from phase 2/3 by July. And in fact, the conclusion will be by September, but we still think that we will be still going back with the data which is available by July, Shyam.
Yeah. And just from an efficacy perspective, is there any early read or early data readout that is giving us the confidence because this was not one of the top drugs being talked about. So just from your own diligence perspective, is there some comfort that you can share us on the efficacy of the vaccine?
See, as far as efficacy is concerned, the reason there is not much news about AB612 is because phase 2 and 3 has not happened, and any efficacy we'll be talking about after we conclude that only. That is, after we started progressing in that direction only, Shyam. That is number one. Number two is, in the due diligence, our folks were very comfortable with that safety and the immunogenicity data. That's why we have gone ahead, and there is a fair level of confidence on efficacy as well. In fact, they have designed even the study with a clear intention that they'll be able to get good efficacy. That's why they even designed the study.
Got it. Thank you and all the best.
Thanks, Shyam.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitin Agarwal from DAM Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Govind, we've talked about a fair bit of new investment areas now, especially with this whole API investments getting a leg up. Now, it doesn't mean a meaningful increase in our capex plans over the next 2 to 3 years, and what implications do you think it has for the balance sheet? Does it lead to any meaningful increase in debt for us over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. First and foremost, Nitin, you would appreciate the fact that whenever we are talking about this particular investment, these investments are happening over a period of time. So let us talk one at a time. Currently, we are maintaining our capex is around 200 million, as you are aware of it, year on year. Okay. That is on the regular capex we talk about. The second is, what we have mentioned is, we will still continue with the around 200 million number. It could be plus or minus something, around 200 million number in terms of capex. Around about that, the PLI scheme number would be the top up or additional. And the reason why we still believe that we will be able to handle within the 200 or in that range of 200, 225 is because of the fact that for the past few years, our investment in terms of creation of capacity was more focused on the finished dosage. As you are aware of it, we have created 10, we have created 15, we are creating the Chinese facility, we have created the US injectable. So all these capexes have we have gone ahead with more of formulation capacity creation. Now the focus is shifting in terms of, and that particular capacity creation we have done in formulation is enough for us for the foreseeable future. Now we are shifting focus in terms of the regular capex to flow more into the API. So we are not expecting, except for the PLI scheme, we are not expecting a tectonic shift in terms of the capex is what I would say, Nathan.
Okay, so if I were to read it correctly, barring the PLI scheme, we will continue to be in the $200-220 million annual capex range, and PLI is a one-time expense that will come through over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yes, and that one time, you have to remember the PLI I had mentioned around 32 months you take in terms of the spread also, as far as that number is also concerned.
Got it. Secondly, what are the timelines for our commercialization of our Vizag plant for Europe and in ROW injectables?
So it will take 15 months, Nitin.
So from here on?
Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, on vaccine, you talked about exploring contract manufacturing opportunities for both bacterial as well as viral vaccines. Given the timeline that you've mentioned for our own COVID vaccine, clearly, is it fair to expect that from our, for both the bacterial and the COVID, our own COVID vaccine this year essentially is going to be literally, our revenues are going to be unlikely. Commercialization approvals are going to be unlikely. So are we going to start utilizing those facilities for contract manufacturing sometime this year onwards? Or this is something which is going to happen subsequently for us, given the fact that we'll have enough capacities available with our with the plants being ready by June, as you mentioned on the viral side?
Let me qualify your statement. When you say this year is, you're talking about, like, I think, till March, nothing is going to happen. But if you're talking about FY22, definitely, like, we expect to utilize that facility for COVID vaccine, as far as the viral facility is concerned. So when I talk about contract manufacturing, is after accounting for whatever our needs, whatever is the available capacity, we'll explore for the future is what I mentioned. So according to me, definitely, like, I think we are expecting to submit the data by, let's say, like July, and then we still expect approval during the next financial year, and we expect still to utilize the facility for manufacturing. And also our own arrangement with COVAX also allows us to do some contract manufacturing for them for their markets also. So definitely the facility would be utilized with our confidence, Nitin.
Okay. Thank you, and best of luck.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tarang from Old Bridge Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good morning. I have 3 questions. One, if I look at each of the last 3 quarters and compare it to the same quarters of the previous years, your gross margin profile has improved. On a 9-month basis, your gross margin table has moved up by about 300 pips to around 60%. So if you could point out some major factors that are driving this and how sustainable is it?
Mr. Tarang, if you recollect last quarter also this question has been raised and we have explained to that, and one of the factor is we have been growing overall. The exchange rates have contributed well, and Europe business have contributed well, and these are all the 2 major reasons. And apart from that, the product profile has been improving overall in all the markets, which we have explained it in the last quarter itself. So if you really see between last quarter to this quarter, there is no major change except the impact on account of the MES benefits. There is no major change in that.
Okay. My second question is, despite the second wave of virus and associated impediments in Europe, you seem to be holding fort there. What's driving this, and how should we see this moving forward?
Tarang, in fact, if you recollect, September to December period or early part of December period, the lockdowns had lifted in Europe. So that's why we have bounced back and regained the sales trend.
And how are things looking right now and going forward?
Yeah, going forward, I cannot predict. It depends on how the governments act and also how the customers and the patients and the hospitals work way around. It depends a lot on that. But of course, late December to January, things have worsened in terms of the patient activity. But I am hopeful that will be temporary because the vaccination is ongoing.
Okay, thank you. And the third one, on the ARV business, how's your market share moved? Because as I understand, there are multiple players in the TLD space, and some seem to be garnering strong momentum in the space.
As far as ARV, even in South African market, like I think we are supposed to get X. Actually, we got additional more than whatever we have been even given the initial commitment. So definitely we are garnering better market share than what we had originally budgeted also, I would say, sir.
Across all geographies, that is LMIC?
So majority would be still tenders. In tenders, we are getting better market share. So we didn't see. Definitely, like I think better than whatever we had even planned also. So we don't have any surprises on that. We have some minor positive surprises only.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tarang.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sameer Shah from ValueQuest. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for taking my question. Sir, 2 questions. One is on the CapEx plan for next year. What is, or the next couple of years, what is the CapEx and such, apart from the PLI?
Apart from the PLI scheme, we should talk about around 200 to 225 million is at this juncture, whatever visibility we have, Sameer.
Okay. And this would be in which areas?
So more capex would be flowing into the API in the short term, I would say.
Okay. And second, for Subbu sir, bookkeeping question. We have not opted for the new tax rate. Any particular reason for that?
So one is we have carried a MAC credit of around 300 crores as on 1st April 2020. So fortunately, we have liquidated that during this year, and we will be working out how to move to concessional tax regime next year. Probably we will be able to give that clarity very clearly in the May earnings call.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. The next question is on the line of Rahul Veera from Abakkus AMC. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Just wanted some color on the write-offs that we've done of 400 crores this quarter, because of patents and design shows 2,500 crores of intangibles and goodwill is of 900 crores. So 400 crores of write-off is close to 12 to 13% this quarter itself.
First of all, we have not written off anything. We have made a provision as per the accounting standards in view of the volatile market conditions and the slowdown in the market. Okay. As I explained earlier, we will revisit it once the normalcy returns, probably by March 22. We will revisit it.
Okay. Fair point, sir. That's it from my end, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is on the line of Arpit Kapoor from IDFC Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. Just one question on the PLI scheme. We've been hearing that there is another PLI scheme for formulation that the government may announce in subsequent months. So are we looking to participate in that as well?
Of course, we'll participate, sir.
And again, depending upon whatever products we win, there'll be commensurate capex for the plants that we would have to do.
We have to observe it, sir, because first of all, I think we are in the process of creating some capacities as well. Like I think if it is aligned with that, I think we may not need an additional capex. It all depends on what sort of portfolio is coming up. We will decide. Because even when you are talking about PLI scheme, like I think we need to also study whether we are talking about, like I think they are on investment on only greenfield or they are accommodating brownfield. All those has to be studied before we start specifically getting into the capex aspect. That's what I would say.
Okay, so as of now, there is no clarity whether we necessarily have to do a greenfield capex to qualify for a PLI, or our existing brownfield capacities may also qualify.
We don't know because the scheme is yet to be announced as far as the formulations are concerned, Arpit. Because in case of like PLA scheme for the antibiotics, obviously we need to create the capacity. Those are not, nobody will have that existing.
Sure. Thanks and all the best.
Thanks, Arpit.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Praful Bora from Systematics. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, morning. So the fact that our injectable business has now reached a critical stage, almost at $440 million annualized, and the way, the valuations that some of our peers are trading at, is there any thought process on, value unlocking in this business, maybe not immediate, but at a future point of time?
I don't think we can comment on such things because these are the decisions which should be arrived at the board. So I don't think that I can comment on that, sir.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is on the line of Surya Patra from Phillip Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, sir. So just wanted to have a sense on the PLI. While the threshold limit for the announced product, threshold investment limit for the announced product is around 400 odd crores. What was the thought process behind allocating like 3,000 crore for the three product? That is one. And on these kind of asset investment, what is the asset on generally that one should really look at? And I believe what is the current procurement that you would be having for these products from, let's say, wherever, China or whatever, and how would this investment change our competitive positioning for these products versus Chinese suppliers?
Okay, the first point is I would request Subbu also to comment on it. I don't think that like it is 400 crores vis-a-vis 3,000 crores because I think it's very clearly like even in the document which has been released, they talked about the numbers what you had mentioned. Subbu, you have any comments on that?
I don't have any comments.
No. So what he's saying is he saw 400 crores against we are talking about 3,000 crores. Anywhere 400 crores you have seen from our PLI scheme you have mentioned? Not right. I mean, you're not mentioning.
Where you picked up 400 crores is where have you picked up?
It was the threshold investment limit to qualify for.
No, if you really see the circular on 29th October 2020, the 400 crore threshold has been removed already.
Acha, okay. So that means this is the need of the product investment.
Obviously, sir. Because please understand that when we have created the budget for creating the capacity, we have also mentioned that as part of the threshold investment, and that is what has been even in the approved document mentioned. So there is no confusion on that. That is one. The second question is, like you asked where the products are right now coming from. Currently, yes, it is coming from China. Number 3 is like I think what would that add value to us, because our own captive consumption is to the extent of almost 40-45%. We will be consuming these products. What we'll be producing against the PLI products is what I mentioned in terms of specific antibiotics. Any other query you have on that?
Okay, just a additional point on this is having seen the end-to-end integration, whenever that we have seen end-to-end integration for any API or anything, there is a kind of significant value creation that we have witnessed already for many products. So here also, I think the PLI, the kind of incentive that the government is giving, this can influence the overall margin of the company. Is that right, sir?
Yeah. So I had mentioned earlier also, sir, our objective is to make the product competitive with or without incentive. So definitely, like with the incentive, it should improve the margin, sir, in terms of the entire portfolio of products.
Okay. So my second question is on the European business front. So we are setting up a dedicated facility, injectable facility for Europe. Currently in the global injectable business, what is the share of Europe, sir? And
that would be like in a 9-month basis we had about 55 million euros. So I would imagine it would be close to 20%.
Okay. So this thought process behind the setting a dedicated plant for Europe means it is to bring in the manufacturing aspect to here, or it is to introduce new product, or any thought process on that front?
Yeah, actually our current injectable plant, the main general injectable plant, Unit 4, is catering exclusively to US. It doesn't have capacity to supply to Europe. So we have something close to 20 products which are filed or approved, but we are not able to capitalize on that. We have been marketing some part of meropenem demand, but otherwise we are outsourcing from the Europe. And Piptaz is the one, and maybe one more, ampicillin, sulbactam. So I guess once we have this new plant, which is not only for Europe, but Europe plus growth markets, we will be able to immediately supply those 20 products which are approved or filed. And then we will take total to another 30. So it will add up to 50, will be a fair size to supply the general injectables.
Okay, if I just extend my injectable question, so see, with the two capacity, like US capacity addition and this European or growth market oriented capacity addition, scope wise, what is the kind of incremental business that it can add to the existing injectable business, global injectable business?
So we have already mentioned, sir, currently we are at 380 million and we will be reaching around 650 million to 700 million over the next 3 years. We have already mentioned that, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Just last question, if I ask, sir, on the R&D side, so having seen, having added more financial flexibility after this achieving the net cash position, so on the R&D side, and also seeing the kind of a progression on the multiple specialty product side, what is the R&D spend trajectory that you are witnessing, and how that can influence the overall margin?
So currently, like I think it's around 6.2, if I remember it right, like in this quarter. Annual basis might be lower, but ultimately, as we had mentioned earlier also, if together two phase 3s happen in terms of biologic, biosimilars or any major vaccine trial also together happens, then it can go to around 7.5% is our belief based on our current visibility. So I think it's not a huge shift is what I would say in terms of the numbers.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Neha Manpuria from JP Morgan. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. One follow-up. Given we are a net cash company now, we're generating, enough cash flow. You've mentioned that your capex will still remain in the $200 million plus PLI. How should we look at, capital allocation? Would M&A be an option? And if yes, what areas would we be looking at?
I think we are not looking at any large ticket acquisition, Neha, because we are well sufficed in terms of our own pipeline, our own platforms, our own geographic representation. We are well entrenched and we don't see the need for it. Having said that, we have clearly articulated our M&A strategy in terms of either the market expansion or new geographies or in terms of any newer platforms. This is what we said. Even recently, we acquired Profectus and Recrescent or vaccines is because it's a newer platform. So that's how our M&A strategy has been clearly articulated. We don't expect to do any major big ticket acquisition, at least for a foreseeable future, say 2-3 years.
Understood. And so on the capex fund, other than the injectable investment, Vizag and US and API, is there anything else that is planned? Because the vaccine will get completed soon, China plant will get completed soon. Is there anything else that is planned? I think there was something that we were also thinking about in Europe, right?
Yeah, that would also happen. But whatever I said, I think those would happen over a period, and still we believe, as per the current visibility, we still believe we'll be able to accommodate within the numbers what we talked about.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vishal Manchanda from Nirmal Bang. Please go ahead.
Thanks for taking my question. On your PLI investments, could you share what kind of an asset turn would be achievable?
Subbu?
Yeah. Vishal, in the PLI, you have to look at it like this. It will be used for captive consumption as well as for external sales also. Even though it must be around 50% you can take it. But nearer the date only we'll see what is the exact percentage depending upon the market condition, depending upon our own captive consumption, etc. So the asset turnover ratio will not really make it look this one. But our Baldras typically we have been doing around 1.5 to 2 times is the captive, the asset turnover ratio we have been doing it. And at least we will make an endeavor to ensure that our asset turnover ratio is not deteriorating.
Okay. So just a point here, assuming all of it is sold to third parties, so would that, in that case, would that be around 1.5 to 2? Or because I think this is more of a fixed cost business and requires more upfront investments and less of the variable costs. So is that the right understanding?
No, see, when we say it is 1.5 to 2, it is our existing this one. So you don't count it now because maybe down the line 1 year we will be able to give clarity based on the market conditions and our own captive consumption. Please do not get into that right now. But we made a broad, Govinda made a broad statement. Without the incentive, we will try to make it very able to reach our numbers, etc. That is what we are working on.
Okay, sir. And just one more. Sir, your operating net cash flow from operations was negative during the quarter. Could you share some color on that?
Yeah, I'll give you a very clear this one. If you really see our cash profit from operation during the quarter is around $68 million, right? And we got a net cash from Natol to the tune of around $434 million. When I say net cash, net of tax, whatever tax we have paid till 31st December and other thing. Against that, we have invested in the capex to the tune of around 76 million. And also, if you know, we have invested in the UGI, including the debt, to the tune of around 105 million. And we have paid a dividend of 10 million. So the free cash flow available of everything is around 311 million. And my debt at the beginning of the quarter was $194 million. And after adding this free cash flow of 311 million, I ended with a closing cash of around 117 million. I think this has given the full clarity to you. Okay?
What I mean is, in the first half, so closing September 21, you had a cash flow from business after working capital at $260 million, while for the 9 months it is $223 million. So,
this quarter there is a slight increase in the working capital on account of the inventories, and also our creditors have come down this quarter. So that is the reason. And normally we will incur around $40 to $50 million in the capex on a 200 million base on a quarter 50, but we have incurred around the 76 million this quarter. So there is an increase in that. And as I said, there is a small increase in there is an increase in the working capital. That is the main reason.
Okay, sir. Just one more, if I could. If you look at your European performance, so what I can see is some of the large cap peers in Europe, like STADA and KRK, they are doing EBITDA margins in the range of 20 to 25%. So what it would take Aurobindo to get there in the same range?
We are already now crossed into double digits. So our EBITDA is this quarter about 15%. So we are on the way, but we need to increase our market share and need to get more sale from also Eastern Europe, which we just entered with the acquisition of Apotex business. So I guess once we cross the threshold of $1 billion, we should be seeing constant upward movement. Secondly, we have not launched Eugia oncology products to a great extent. We have 52 products under development, and they will be launched over next 1.5 year. And then you have heard about Vizag injectable plant. So we already have a very good presence in hospital, but we don't have products. So we will be launching this general injectable, which gives a better margin. And also we are expanding, I think, the Penem block. So we will be able to launch and source more Penem products from there. So all this will lead to improvement in margins.
Got it. Thanks, Srini.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Kunal Ganesha from Emkay Global. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question. So first is on the Pen-G PLI application that we have done. So we are the sole applicant. So do we have any clarity from the regulatory authority that we will be eligible for the entire pie of the incentive for that molecule?
We have received the letter for the full quantum, whatever we had applied for.
No, so because the incentive was to be started between two players, right? So one player was eligible for like 120 crore incentive, but now that we are only alone in the Pen-G, so have we got a clarity that we will receive the entire 240 crore quantum incentive?
That's my belief, sir. We will get the total 240 crores. That's my belief, sir. Subbu, you have any different opinion on that?
Yeah, that is our endeavor to get it, and we have raised certain clarifications, etc. And it will take some time for the government to respond.
Subbu, the question is, will we get 240 or will we get only 120 is the question, Subbu.
That on the products where we are the single participant, we will be getting around 240 of the applicable incentives. In case of joint, along with another guest.
Subbu, the question is on Pen-G, Subbu. We are alone, so we will get
240. We are alone, but why this? Because I do not understand. 240 we will get it.
No. So my question is, have you got a regulatory clarity that you will get 240 or it is still pending? You are still yet to get the clarity on that.
No, we got the clarity on the Pen-G very clearly. There is no ambiguity on that.
Okay. And secondly, on the MEIS incentive or export incentive that you mentioned in the presentation, that the growth market had incentive around 77 crore in the quarter 3 FY20 and this quarter around only 3 crores. So if I look at the revenue incentive as a percentage of growth market revenue, the incentive comes out to be around 22% for quarter 3 FY20. So just as far as I believe, the MEIS incentive were ranging from 3 to 5%. So why is there a big gap, and do we not receive significant incentive on our US and Europe export as well?
Sir, I would like to clarify, which Subbu will also confirm, that it has been shown against the particular growth market, but actually it is spread across all the products. So that's how it is.
Yeah. Because the incentive is being received by the from the standalone company which is coming under the growth market. So it has been shown. And we are given a very clear note at the bottom of the presentation itself, clarifying this point.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the last question. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Krishna Kiran for his closing comments.
Thank you all for joining us on the call. If you have any questions unanswered, please keep in touch with Investor Relations. The transcript of this call will be uploaded on our website, www.aurobindo.com, in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Aurobindo Pharma Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.